Losi's newest releases continue to be a hot topic, especially the Pro Moto MX. People are still going crazy over that, and rightfully so, but they're not leaving out their four-wheel drive fans. They have something I think you've been waiting for, something really exciting, a Baja Rey 2.0. These are ready-to-run trucks. They come out of the box just like this, built, painted, and the electronics installed. You're just going to have to provide a battery and charger to get them going. Now, the big deal here, guys, is these aren't just a body refresh. There's a number of new parts on this truck, which we're going to go over today. I actually was able to borrow a V2 truck, so I'll be able to show you those new details side by side. But let's start going over the bodies here, and I'm going to start off with the Eisenhower brothers because the Ford, we're going to compare the two. The Eisenhower brothers truck is absolutely awesome. I love this retro Ford body. Losi is really stepping things up here. We've seen that over the past few years, and actually I want to know what you think about it. Do you think they're going in the right direction with these realistic scale bodies on top of performance chassis, or would you rather just have a performance chassis from them and you don't really care about the looks? Let me know in the comments section below. But back to this Eisenhower brothers truck. Its setup is similar to the previous truck in that it has multiple body panels for a more realistic look. There's actually a new cage underneath with new mounting points. This grille is absolutely intense. It's a molded plastic piece, satin chrome. They have clear lenses. That's because there's LED lights behind it. The rubber valance below. That is a really cool off-road desert truck look. All right, I'm gonna put this aside and I'm gonna go grab our V2 Raptor, the black Rhino wheels truck. And you can see they have new body panels on this truck. We got a new one-piece front clip on this, new Ford grille, and inside the grille they have the LED lights just like the real truck has. Molded vent on top, different shape from the previous version, and still 4 screws hold it on. The headlights don't light up in this. These are just decals. Then moving back, we've got that same 7 LED light pod that we saw on the F-100 truck. That's just a really cool look. They get the LED lights in the back, and then they've got clear lenses in the front. Similar interior, just they changed up the decals to go along with this livery. And the graphics on this body are absolutely killer. I love the graphics. Moving around to the back, new rear fender panels, and then a dual spare setup, just like we saw on the Eisenhower truck. Same details on the inside. They do change out the logos on the reservoirs. These have King reservoirs on it. You got the fire extinguisher, the spare jack, and then the LED lights out back. So it's a great looking truck, and as you can see, much more modern than the previous version, and it is a sick looking truck. All right, I'm gonna go pull the body panels off of this, and we're gonna start talking about all the changes they made to the chassis and the cage on the new trucks. So that took about 5 minutes with electric driver to get all the body panels off of these things, but now we can see the differences between the two trucks, and right off the bat you're probably noticing this cage work here is a bit more intense than the V2 version. They still have these little plastic discs that help support the body, which I'm actually not a huge fan of because now they have all these different sizes and you have to make sure you don't knock these off because then you have to figure out where they go, where the previous version, they just had a single disc, made life a little bit easier. So that's one downside, but the look of this cage is so much better and it's actually a bit more functional than the previous version. So when you wanted to work on the V2 version, you had to take the whole cage off. With this one, the 2.0, you could remove this front section and access a lot of the interior stuff a lot easier, and that's always good in my book. Okay, let's get into the front ends because there's some changes here, and obviously we've got a change in the shocks. So on the V2 version, it was just a single shock up front. Now we have similar shocks. They're oil filled. They've got the bump stops on the bottom. They've got silver caps instead of blue caps. But if I turn this just a little bit, you can now see they have a dampening shock right behind it. They've revised the arms, the upper and lower arm to accept the new shocks. This makes the damping feel much more plush. Now, what I was told is this is set up different from the factory than the V2 version. This is set up so you could go out, have a similar type of driving experience to a real desert truck would encounter when it's off-roading. So if you're looking to go big air jumping, like A-scale type of stuff, or you're looking to drive on high traction surfaces, it's not set up out of the box for that. And that's totally fine in my book. They've made it known, and they do offer additional springs so you can go and tune this if you want to go big air with it, but they're really trying to give you that motorsports experience scaled down. So I wanted to point that out to you guys, share it. So if you do plan on running it hard, you will have to do some tuning to it. That's part of RC. Back to the setup. The upper arm I noticed is a little bit flexible. The lower arm is pretty rigid, but the same steering knuckles on the outside, and then they have the faux disc brakes on the outside just to give us that scale look that we had before. This one looks like it has a new front shock tower. This one looks a bit thicker than the previous version. So that's the changes to the front of the truck. The one thing I think is missing here are mounts for a sway bar. I'm not seeing that, and I've actually stared at it a little bit, and I haven't found an option to go put sway bars on this thing. And then one other thing to note, it's actually about the gear case in this. There's a change, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. They've also increased the amount of plastic here in this lower hinge pin area. On the previous truck, there was a recess there, so that should help with durability as well. All right, let's move on to the rear suspension of the trucks. And you know, at first glance, there's some similarities, but there's some changes as well. The lower trailing arm appears to be the same from what I see. There's a single shock on the V2. However, you can see on the 2.0, they have another dampening shock in the back. So we've got 8 shocks in total on this new truck. The main shock looks similar to the previous version. They just changed up the colors on it. There is the rear sway bar, and they did go and change the upper links. So the top links here are a bit beefier out by the ball ends. So that shouldn't elongate like some people were experiencing on the previous truck. So they made some changes to the suspension. You know, it feels really good. Love the long travel. But let's get back to some more of those changes, and I'm actually just gonna spin it around and talk to you about the front gear case. So there's a big change up in the gear case. It's now easier to access the differential in the 2.0. That case looks a bit beefier than the previous version, and you can remove the front plate of it and slide the differential out of the front. Absolutely awesome. Still a oil-filled gear differential, steel outdrive, steel universals. And then let's move on to the center drivetrain. Actually, you know, you got dog bones to the center drivetrain setup. Pretty much similar to the previous version. I don't think there was any changes actually when I looked in there. Still have the metal Mod 1 gears, so it's a well-built assembly. The motor drops out. There's easy access to the pinion gear if you need to get to that. And then some changes have been made when we get to the rear axle. Still got the slider drive shaft out to the rear axle. There is metal yokes on the universals, so that is more durable. But the big change is right here in the pumpkin. We'll start off with the front cover section here. There's new larger bearings. So there's a 5x11 front bearing and a 5x13 rear bearing in this. So that'll be much more durable to support that metal bevel pinion gear. And then right behind it is a fully sealed differential, just like the front on this. So a lot of people wanted that. The previous version, actually, I'm gonna overlay a picture where you could see the V2 leaking, and that's what the new changes on the 2.0. They have it sealed now, so you won't have that leaking issue, and you can go and tune everything. So I really like that change. That's probably one of the best changes that they have on this. So then they have the dog bones out to the axles, and now you could go and change the insert at the end of the axle as well. It comes with a 0-degree insert in it, or they include a 3-degree rear insert, so you get 3 degrees of toe on this. So that is a really welcome change. Now onto the chassis. Same 3mm thick chassis on the new truck, 2.5mm top plate, pretty rigid structure throughout. The battery slides in through the back, just like we saw before. It actually has the insert in it, so you run a 2S pack in here. A lot of people love running this truck on 2S. From what I saw, there was a slight change to the steering. They've bulked it up a little bit. And now let's get into the electronics. So it's still got a full spectrum setup. There's a 614S steering servo. You got the 130 amp Firma speed controller, brushless speed controller, and then the 3800 kV Spectrum brushless motor. This time, however, they wrapped it in that massive orange heat sink that they have to help dissipate any heat inside there. That is a change I really like seeing when I pop the panels off of this truck. And then they have a Spectrum AVC receiver, so you get the benefits of, you know, using the AVC if you want to, active vehicle control. So that will give you a little bit of counter steering, a little bit of throttle manipulation to just help you settle this truck in if you want, or you could go and turn it off. You have that option, which is really cool. The Spectrum DX3 radio system comes with it, and the only other stuff that's in the box is the instruction manual, some servo inserts if you want to go swap out to an aftermarket brand servo, and you get a Losi decal. This is a really exciting release, guys. I can't wait to go out and drive it. So let's head out to the dirt and see how the 2.0 handles. All right, guys, we're gonna do a quick run through on the drive because it's 98 degrees out and super humid. I am just drenched in sweat and already out of water. But man, this thing is fast. I don't remember it being this fast before. It's on 3S and it's just intense. A lot of suspension travel. That's what I love about this truck. You just got to pick your lines though. This soft sand, it'll get those tires dug in. This thing will roll right over. I gotta be honest with you guys, I like this truck better on 2S. I liked it before on 2S, but on 3S it just becomes a wild beast. So in this loose stuff, it gets really edgy. That is a good looking truck. Probably my favorite. I don't know. I like the Method Raptor too, but man, this F-100 is just sick. I gotta tell you, the temperatures were absolutely brutal when I was out driving these trucks, but the performance made it all worth it. Number one, these things look really good when you're just blasting through the dirt like a real desert truck would. Just dust trailing off the back of these things. When you're going through turns, watching the dirt roll off the side of the tires. When you're going over bumps, just seeing that blast of sand going through the air. It really gets the adrenaline running and you just want to pull the throttle even more. I'll start off on the outside with the new bodies on these. The only issue I have with the looks is actually the Eisenhower body. The front clip seems to chatter when you're driving around. The mounting point is midsection on the hood, so the front end just kind of chatters. It needs a little bit more support up front, and maybe it's just a foam block behind the grill area, right where there's a bumper tab, might help, you know, soften it a little bit. But the bodies seem to hold up well. The Eisenhower truck will scratch on the outside if you roll it hard on like a rock or something like that, and the body's clear underneath, so maybe if you painted the underneath silver, it would look kind of cool with the scratches and stuff. But other than that, the body's held up. Onto the handling. These trucks were built and designed to go through the bumps. For big air stuff, this is not your setup right out of the box. You're gonna have to do some tuning to it. Losi really wanted you to get that desert floor experience where you're just blasting through the rough stuff, the bumps, and the suspension soaks everything up. They got the 8 shocks on there now, and it does soak up the bumps. Through the straight line bumps, you can just see the suspension working and it keeps the truck nice and stable. The only time the truck really gets upset is if you're going hard into a loose corner where there's just a ton of loose dirt, it will catch and it'll roll on you. But you know, for the corners, you just gotta back off a little bit more and let it roll through the corner, you're good to go. The rough handling, I think, has definitely been improved. So if you wanna go big jumps, again, they're gonna have different springs. You probably have to change up the oils a little bit. I drove the Eisenhower truck off a few jumps. In my other video that I did on this, on our second channel, I'll have a link to that in the video description below. And you can see once it lands off of a big jump, it just pops the front end up, or the whole truck just pops right up off the ground because it's just slapping. So if you want to go big air with it, you're gonna have to do a little bit of changing, and that's part of the RC model hobby, is tuning your vehicle the way you want to drive it. Steering on these were pretty good as well. Again, just don't go hot into the loose corners, but you know, when you're driving around on flat ground, the rear end actually feels a little bit loose, and I think it's because of the harder short tires, but it's got plenty of steering to it. I did notice that there is some steering slop to this. It's actually in the servo from what I could tell. I'm not a big fan of how much slop there is in that. And if you're just driving this for fun and feel that you're having a problem with the loose steering as well, you might want to go and swap out the servo. It does get the job done in the end. Now onto maybe one of the most important parts. These trucks are fast on 3S. Maybe a little too fast. I actually enjoy driving these trucks more on a 2S battery, just much more manageable, not as edgy. I took a look at the trucks and I'm not seeing any durability issues yet, other than that steering issue that I mentioned, a little bit of body chatter. Took a look at the rear axle assembly. I'm not seeing any leaking there. Just a little bit of dirt collecting on the bottom of the cartridge of the shocks. And these trucks took a couple of really tough tumbles out there, and there's really no other issues to report. Losi has done it once again. I mean, I think they're just giving us a really cool motorsports experience in RC form, and I can't wait to see what they have coming up next.